I gotta say, I love the ambition of the show. I had no idea what to expect. I'm a big Grease fan. I was in two productions of it myself. I unapologetic Grease 2 lover. Um,
Absolutely.
I don't know, I was so bowled over by the ambition of the show. So and I think, oh my God, you Central Four are incredible. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Um,
Thank
oh
you.
my goodness. I guess I sort of don't know where to start, like a shit ton of questions, but it's I think Rise of the Pink Ladies is such a great combination of a lot of things. It's period, but has a contemporary mind. It acknowledges the past, but also acknowledges the struggles of so many different things all at once, but it never flounders under any bigger thematic things. So I was curious, like reading it, getting into the audition process. I guess I just wanted to know, in a general sense, what excited you about something that is both a look back, but also a hopeful look forward.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie, and I'm sure you won't be surprised by hearing this, but whenever I first learned that I was auditioning for a Grease television show, I
Mm-hmm.
was very intimidated
Mm-hmm.
by just the amount of love for this show and like the nostalgia around these movies in the musical. And so to sort of be asked to bring myself to something that is so solidified in our culture um, was very daunting.
Mm-hmm.
But I read the pilot thankfully while we were in callbacks, and I was sold immediately. Like
Yeah.
the way that they handled Cynthia and the way that they pitched this character to me was so compelling. Because I think that it's sort of easy to fall into the trap of like, the lesbian hates herself and the world hates her too, and because that's a lot of our experience, where like I had a lot of help, like self hatred growing up as a queer
Mm-hmm.
person, because I was raised Catholic, and so I had a lot of shame and guilt. But in the 50s, the people that I talked to, that experience was definitely some people's experience, but most people didn't have it much context at all for how they were
Mm-hmm.
feeling. And so the way that they pitched Cynthia to me had so many question marks and not very many statements. Like, she was butch, she was very strong, and she, a little bit of a live wire, but she really didn't know much about herself. She was figuring that out throughout the season in
Yeah.
such a pure and a like sweet, high school secret love affair situation. And
Yeah.
like the writers just took such great care of this character. So I felt very, very sure that it was going to go well.
Yeah. There's something about, you say live wire. There's something about how Cynthia, I did want to ask, because Cynthia is the first person at the end of the first episode to yank their pants down to moon
Mm.
the to moon the audience. And I just wanted to know, like, living in that sort of unpredictable live wire energy, I feel like that is intimidating. Is that intimidating, or is that something that's just like, all right, let's do it. Let's come on. I don't know. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that about Cynthia.
I was not funny or outgoing or in any capacity a live wire
Mm-hmm.
ever in my life. And except maybe when I was like a very small infant and was like obsessed with talking to people because I just
Mm-hmm.
learned how to say the word hello. But since then, I've been like kind of quiet and I don't really know what to say. I trip over my words. I have no confidence, except when I'm on stage, of course, when people give me words to say. But Cynthia is so unlike me in that way. She is like the most outgoing and has no filter and is just like, we're doing this, and like, and so I was so intimidated by that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not who I am or my experience as a person growing up. And so I feel like Cynthia's kind of brought it out of me, because on set I was like, well, I guess I have to be the class clown now. Like, this is my job, is to be the class clown. And so now I like crack a joke. Sometimes it lands, very regularly it doesn't. But like it was so much fun, and it's sort of something you can't just like put a toe in and be Cynthia. Like, you have to just
Yeah,
jump in,
jump. Oh yeah. No, I
dive
would
in.
actually, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that, because you bring such a how would I want to word this? Like a joyous freedom to a lot of things. And a lot of situations, I feel like Cynthia is the first person to say something, the first person to hurl an insult at somebody. I think that's a very aspirational quality for someone who is, I mean, I am admittedly much out of removed from high school. I'm very much approaching 40, but I feel like it is very I don't know, looking back at that energy is very inspiring in a way. So just on that front, I thought Cynthia was very inspiring. Um I do I do want to ask about some of the choreography, just because I do not know how any of y'all did this. Every single freaking number. I have no idea. It's so I love Jamal Sims. I had the pleasure of speaking with him. He's like a legend within his own right.
Mm-hmm.
These musical numbers are not small. None of them are small. Um, I wanted to know, I guess, both as Ari but and as Cynthia, how did it kind of feel to have new cool just because you're leading all these boys. The song is both it's a nod to like Grease Lightning. It's very early on
Mm-hmm.
season. I guess I just wanted to know what that was like because that number is one of my favorite songs of the whole season.
Yeah, me too. That's another one. Like I saw the script and I heard the demo and I was like, I get to do this. This is
Yeah.
insane. Um, yeah, very similar to how I feel about Cynthia's extrovertedness. I would consider myself like a singer actor first and a dancer maybe fifth.
Mhm.
In
It's
college, I always would.
I was like, I'm a mover.
Yeah.
That's what I would always say. I was
Right.
like, I can move.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, if people ask like, "Oh, are you a dancer?" and I call back, I'll be like, "I dance." So yeah, and so I like texted my a lot of like some of my teachers in college who like encouraged me and allowed me to take not just the beginner but the intermediate dance classes. And I was
Mhm.
like, thank you so much, because I would not be able to pick up that choreography and do
Right.
it to the best of my abilities had I not had people who like were like, you can do it. I believe in you. Since I was, like in college at Penn State. And so to show up and then like be able to lead a musical number for my first professional job out of
Mhm.
college, after not having been cast in a lead role in all of college in a
Mhm.
full main stage production. So it was very daunting, but it was so much fun. And of course, Jamal, as you've met him, is like the loveliest person.
Mhm.
Um, and there was just so much grace. Like they just went character first and like, and made sure that all this movement was comfortable and it was so much fun. And
Yeah.
of course, the dancers behind me are killing it. So like, it's kind of impossible not to look good, you
Right.
know?
You say that I was intimidated to talk to Jamal, but then I was like, oh, you're just like the nicest person in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, I wanted to ask about a dramatic scene. I mean, it's the scene at, I feel like the next couple questions. We talked about how, or you mentioned that, it's not a story about pain with Cynthia since we have so many queer narratives that involve that. But there are two moments that I did want to just mention. It's Cynthia when she says, when they say to Shy Guy, if you were a real man, you'd like it. That is a very painful, even just thinking of it, it's really hard. Um, to even think about it. And I feel like even if some people aren't familiar with those specific circumstances, the emotion is really,
Yeah.
they can connect to the emotion of that. So that's the first moment I wanted to ask you about, just because that scene is so hard to watch, but it is so steeped in Cynthia's experience. I just wanted to ask what that was like for you.
Yeah. It was hard to film too.
I imagine.
To just say that to a person is like, it's so painful and it's so steeped in internalized homophobia and
Mhm.
then outright homophobia to a close friend. And but I think the part that was so hard for me was like, I felt that way my whole life. Like if I was a real, if I was a real woman, if I like, if I was actually like a valid human being, I would
Mhm.
have to like men in this way and I would have to dress a certain way and express myself in a certain way to be seen as like a person. Um, and so then to be able to share that on screen and like and do this film this scene, it was really hard because I've been in a scenario like this where I dated men for a significant amount of my dating life,
Mhm.
before I realized that that was compulsory heterosexuality. I didn't realize that I always felt like something was missing. And so then Cynthia has this experience where she's trying to hide this and she's trying to conform and it's not working. And so she takes that out on the one person in the world that might understand her right now. and the person who needs to hear it the least. Um, and so yeah, it was really painful, but it is like I think a part of a bigger story with Shy Guy, which is um like an allyship and like a I do feel like it services the scene services this the friendship and the alliance they need to have
Mhm.
that they have in the next episode 9. Um, but it was yeah, it was painful.
Yeah, that scene where they sit down together is really lovely, and I feel like it's they when you say his name to him, that's a very that's something that is so seemingly simple, but it really speaks volume
Mm-hmm.
to the person that you're speaking it to. That is really that's a really beautiful moment. Um, I did want to ask about the coming out scene with Nancy. Man, you and Trisha have such I love that friendship so much. It's probably my favorite thing about the show. And I love that we don't see it, what is written down on the piece of paper. And I think that is
Mm-hmm.
important. But I wanted to know for the two actors in that scene, did you discuss what was actually written or did you keep that to yourselves?
Yeah, well, I'll never tell you what it is,
Yeah, no, I don't
but
need to know.
me and yeah, me and Trisha, we went through a few ideas with Annabelle, who sort of gave us some ideas, and we did land on something that worked the most for the reaction that Cynthia was having and needed to have for that scene, and then the reaction that Nancy was having and needed to have for that scene, and then the laughter that Cynthia is allowed to have,
Hmm.
and then the falling into her arms. So there had to be a few things that had to happen um, in that conversation
Yeah.
for that to happen. Yeah, I that scene is so special to me.
Mm.
I often have a hard time with words, and so to be able to have a scene where two characters don't really have language
Mhm.
in the moment for whatever reason. For them it's the 1950s, for me it's sometimes because I go nonverbal, and then to be able to still relate to a person and still find the humanity in each other
Mhm.
in something that's so high stakes and so painful, and then to be able to communicate that without language and just know that like the person is there for you and connect with each other is like I just love that scene so much. I cried so much just watching reading it for the first time.
Yeah, I will admit that I cried watching it. It's very I was, just watching it at 1 o'clock in the morning in my house, all alone. Everyone's asleep. It was like me and my dog, and I was just like, the whole it's that is so meaningful, and there's such honesty in that scene, and the choice to not see what's there was like that. I don't need to see it. It's all there
Mm-hmm.
in not even in words, sort of just the way that you laugh, cry. It's just so beautiful, and so pure. So yeah, that's such a beautiful
Thank you.
moment. Um, I do want to ask about Cynthia and Lydia, just because I there's something about towards the end of the season where I feel like your speaking voice almost changes when you are telling Lydia, I really like you the way Gene Kelly likes Debbie Reynolds. And there's a breathlessness to the quality of that scene that I love. And then also leading into All In, I love it. It's very reflective, like literally with all the mirrors, looking at yourself. I just felt like your voice sounded
Mm-hmm.
so open and so honest. And I was curious, maybe I'm just a voice and speech nerd, but I don't know, there was something there that felt very freeing, and I was wondering if you could sort of
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about how that felt physically, because I feel like just hearing you sounded different towards the end of season one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought a lot about how Cynthia and her experience of gender and her own sexuality and also her experience of like acceptance in the world is. And she's a tough cookie, I think, because she has to be.
Yeah.
I actually think she's like the biggest softie. She's always like so hurt by everything. And but she puts on this like tough exterior, and she has this sort of like, you know, uh character about her, I think, in the beginning. And to me, that was a choice because it's, it's a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted her to have greaser energy because those are the people that she's around. So she's sort of performing masculinity and her experience of gender nonconformity
Yeah.
in a way that other people were doing that. She had to express masculinity in a way that the men were doing that were around her because that's the only way that she knew how to do that. And to me, I think her voice has a lot to do with that. The same thing with New Cool. It's like very rock and roll, very
Mm-hmm.
grungy, very strong. And Cynthia continues to be masculine the entire time. It's
Yeah.
just that towards the end, she starts to know that she can just be herself and that I mean, she would probably identify as a girl, although who knows what her experience of gender is
Yeah.
specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she gets to find that she gets to just share herself, and I think the conversation with Lydia and the conversation with Nancy, and then of course the conversations that she has, and any time that she speaks from there on out in the season, you hear a little bit more truth to her. She sounds a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more less like she's putting on a voice and more like she's just being a person. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a choice I made because I also am a huge voice and speech nerd,
Mm-hmm.
and felt like it would do the job of telling that Cynthia was finding herself in a way that was less explicit. Like it wasn't in the text. It was just it was a way for people to feel like Cynthia was changing without telling them that Cynthia was changing.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that is like unspoken, not in the text, that you really bring to it. And it's maybe it's not even something that Cynthia knows that she's doing. It's
Yeah.
no, something that maybe she is unconscious to. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, I think that's all the time I have with you, Ari. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we are having, conversations about, gender and sexuality, especially with a period piece. Like there's a I think Alexandra Billings said in like a documentary about, trans folks, like we were always there. You just had to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really
Mm-hmm.
to insert these conversations into period characters and period stories to sort of reinforce that it's like, no, 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 no. These conversations that we're having now that are knowledgeable are not fads. They're not, whatever thing you want to put on people. It's these gender feelings were always there. So I'm not really articulating that very well, but you
Yeah, no, totally.
yeah.
No, you are 100%. It's something that like I in research for this, but also just like in research for being a queer person, like
Mhm.
you really do have to fight against the oppression of queer folks and trans folks for for written history.
Right.
Um, because of the oppression, it's like very cyclical where we have like moments where queer people can be visible in certain ways, and then the oppressive forces, usually agents of white supremacy,
Mhm.
come forth and literally will burn the history that we have and the progress that
Mhm.
we've made about ourselves. And now once again we're coming to a moment where queer and trans folks,
Mhm.
and people of intersectional identities are are having more of a voice and we're liberating ourselves and liberating each other. And
Yeah.
now there's again forces of, it's like the immune system of white supremacy,
Mhm.
and the white cis heteropatriarchy are coming in and like, you know trying to make it so that we will stop being visible to them, but we won't.
Mhm.
We're not going to.
No,
We never will.
no. This Pride Month is going to be a. Someone said, I saw online just today. They're like, this is a Pride Month full of wrath, and we all have to sort of
Yes.
our ground. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I love your falsettos and company posters as well.
Thank
Um,
you.
very much appreciate that. So it's a great important work, but it's also just really freaking fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really great questions and really great
Thank
talking to you,
you.
Joey.
You too. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
You too. Bye.